So it's true. I am no longer a 100% raw vegan. And what's inspiring me to make this video is the fact that I put up a short form video on TikTok, like almost a year ago, talking about my experience with raw foods. I've been 100% raw, fully raw, eating nothing but fresh fruits and vegetables for the last 30 days. This is what I've noticed. And that video put up some like real numbers. Like as of right now, as of this recording, it's almost at like 500,000 views, which that's crazy. And I do have a personal responsibility to say that although I don't eat 100% raw, like fully raw all the time, like I do eat a vegan diet. I do eat a whole foods, healthy, plant-based diet. And like 11 years ago, March 1st, 2014, which feels like a different world. But like that is when I decided to try a raw foods diet for 30 days just to see how I liked it. I loved it. I loved it so much that here I am 11 years later as a healthy, whole food, plant-based vegan. And I have been like a long-term raw vegan before. Like the first year and a half of my eating vegan was 100% raw. But these days, like I include more like cooked whole foods. I mean, like you should have seen these like taco bowls that I made last night. Like it was like wild rice and like shredded greens. That was kind of like the bed to which like the refried beans and the lentils and the tofu and the bell peppers and fresh tomato. Oh, and these slices of like marinated portobello steaks. Like, oh, so good. But like even when I'm eating food like that, I still occasionally will do like, oh, a couple days 100% raw, or a couple weeks, or even a couple of months at a time. Like there is some magic to it, but we'll get back to that. So a big concept to get out of the way is the fact that pretty much any diet or protocol can attribute all of its success, or at least most of its success, to the fact that there's weight loss associated with that particular diet. And that makes sense. I mean, my doctor used to tell me that like, if you have high blood pressure, lose some weight because the blood pressure drops with the weight. Or like if you've got type 2 diabetes, you're dealing with insulin resistance, you typically become more insulin sensitive if you lose weight, which makes sense. So I'm going to introduce you to a couple of concepts and stick with me. These are important. The first is mechanism. The second is method. So the mechanism is how your body loses weight. And I need to be clear, this is just with a calorie deficit. That's it. And that's why practically any diet or protocol will result in weight loss as long as there is a well-planned calorie deficit. Like even if your diet was nothing but Twinkies and muffins all day, if there was a calorie deficit, you would lose weight. You might not feel very good, but it would result in weight loss. In fact, it's actually just mathematical. Like, let's do a miniature video within this video. How to lose 1 pound of fat using nutritional biochemistry by Made of Plants. Welcome to my makeshift display screen. I will use this to put words on the screen in post-production because I am a professional. So it's really simple. Honestly, in order to lose 1 pound of fat, you need to burn 3,500 calories more than you take in. I could end this little mini video right there, but I want to make this a little more practical for you. So the first thing that you need to figure out, if your goal is to lose fat, is to figure out something called your BMR, which stands for your basal metabolic rate. Now, that just means how many calories are you burning throughout the day, just keeping the vital organs going without exercise. This is your caloric maintenance. And so once you figure out that number, and it can range depending on like age, activity level, muscle mass, those types of things. But if you go online, there's calculators where you can find like a decent average. But once you figure out that number, as long as you eat fewer calories than that number, it will result in fat loss. Every single time. This is the secret behind every single diet. In fact, I can tell you how long it would take you to lose that 1 pound of fat loss. So let's say in this example, you found out that you have a BMR of 2,200 calories per day. And you're like, okay, I'm going to try this calorie deficit thing out. And you decide to eat 2,000 calories per day. That would result in a 200 calorie deficit, which I know we all figured that part out. It's not that hard, but stick with me. So 200 calorie deficit. So what we need to do is we need to take that 3,500 calories, which is what it would take to lose 1 pound of fat, take that number, divide it by your calorie deficit, in this case, which is 200 calories. And that leaves us with 17.5 days is how long it would take you to lose 1 pound of fat. And I hope the mental math is right, because mental math is hard. And so if the mechanism is the way by which we lose weight, which is just a calorie deficit, then the method is essentially how we get to that calorie deficit in the first place. This is just our strategy, whether that be like the exercise regimen, like the boot camp, or like the diet or the protocol, intermittent fasting. Like all these are just strategies to get us to that calorie deficit, which is why literally all of them work as long as you stick with them. That's it. And this is the same information that a lot of like influencers and gurus, especially like the keto, carnivore, paleo guys, they tend to be guilty of this the most, but like they keep this behind the paywall. They're like, oh, buy my course to figure out how to get shredded in 12 weeks. And that's like raining abs. You know what I'm talking about? Like we've all seen those guys. Like, I'm just going to ruin the end of that book for everybody. It is a calorie deficit with regular exercise. Period. End of story. But back to raw foods, because that's what we're actually talking about. So like as a strategy for a caloric deficit, phenomenal. I mean, like those foods are so high in fiber and water content and nutrient content that it's almost impossible. I don't want to say impossible. Anything's possible, but it's almost impossible to eat too many fruits, veggies, leafy greens, nuts and seeds, sprouts. Like you're going to have a hard time getting enough calories, much less exceeding the amount of calories that you need. So as a weight loss strategy, it's very effective. But beyond that, there is something magical about it. Like I can't point you to any scientific research or any particular clinical studies, which is so frustrating because it's the type of thing that you try to explain, but you just really can't. I'm just going to let myself from like a year ago explain it. That's actually a really nice segue into the positive side of things. So energy has been 10 out of 10. Like I wake up with energy. I have energy all day. I do active stuff and then I go to bed with energy, which is weird. I just didn't really expect that. I haven't felt that in years, but it's like, it also makes sense. Like, why do I always have to go to bed when I'm 100% exhausted? Like, do I have to completely tap out the batteries before falling asleep? No. God, what a great thing that feels like. I've also gained a greater appreciation for the food that I eat, even if it's super, super simple. Like I'm just eating nothing but like watermelon for lunch today, probably about a half a watermelon. It's delicious. Which is actually a really nice segue into the hydration side of things. I have never felt more hydrated in my life, which makes sense because when you're eating nothing but like fresh fruits and vegetables, that's like water, fiber, nutrients, just like overload of all those things. It's great. I've said this in another video, but my skin is just glowing, which is great. I've never had issues with like bad skin necessarily, but like it's just better than it's ever been. Then another one that's just kind of weird. I crave the sunlight so much. I've always enjoyed outdoor spaces, doing things outdoors. I go on these long bike rides, etc., but like, it's like addiction level. Like I don't feel complete unless I feel the sun on my skin. All right, this one may come off like a little woo-woo-y, but we're talking about raw veganism. So I mean, this just comes with the territory. But I believe that everything on this planet vibrates at a certain frequency, right? And I believe that the food that vibrates at the highest frequencies of life and love and abundance are things like fresh, ripe, raw, organic fruits and vegetables. And when you consume nothing but those things, like you can't help but to be an amplifier of those same frequencies. And this is almost embarrassing to admit, but I'm kind of a skeptic, a cynic, pessimist, maybe like, but after just eating this way for the past 30 days, like I have actually seen like a sense of joy, like a childlike sense of wonder and joy and enjoyment out of life actually come back. which has been really nice. And that kind of leads me to my final kind of realization and now kind of a philosophy here, which is I've realized that, you know, before I used to be like, oh, if I could just lose the 15 pounds or gain muscle or like whatever it was, like then I could start feeling better. And I've realized it's almost the opposite. Like you start feeling better, and then also as a byproduct of just feeling better, you do all these other things that just, you know, form habits to lead to all these other positive things. So it's like the transformation is spiritual, not necessarily physical. This just changes your spirit and how you feel. And because you feel that way, you crave the sun, you go outside more, you make better choices. Like everything is momentum. So if the raw food diet is so amazing and wonderful and magical, then like, why don't I just do it full time? Well, I did it full time before for like a year and a half, but like now it can be tough. It can be hard. Like, I mean, it's cold where I'm at right now. It's 20 degrees in my town, and like we keep getting these snow flurries, and there's just something about like a day full of snow flurries that like when you get to the end of the day, you're just not as excited about diving into like a big cold salad. You know? Like there's not enough ginger shots in the world that could warm me up enough. Like I want to be like that kid in the old Campbell's soup commercial where like he walks in as like a snowman and then he has like his like cup of soup and then like the snowman melts and reveals there was a child in there the whole time. Like that's the kind of food that I want to eat when it's cold. Like I don't like the cold. And the other aspect is really just the social aspect of everything, right? I mean, like, listen, it's such a simple pleasure, but it's an amazing thing to be able to go, just me and my wife, down to the local Indian food restaurant that we have here. They have this amazing vegan menu, like the chana sog is just so good. Like something like that, or like the simplest of all millennial pleasures, like going out and getting a cup of coffee that was prepared by somebody else. Like, oh, that is the best. I love it so much, right? And yeah, although there is something that's extremely magical that happens when you do eat like, you know, 100% raw. It's just like, for me, I get the most value out of my life when I eat a whole food plant-based diet. And every now and then I'll throw in like a week or two of 100% raw foods. That's where I feel the best. I get like the most out of life. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please let me know in the comments down below. Hit the like if you got any sort of value out of this. And if you've not subscribed, please consider it. This channel is like 2 months old. I very much appreciate all of the support that I've got so far. So I'll see you guys in the next one.